Hello folks, what is up? Rick here from crypto.org. Today we're going to have a workshop on Cronos Play, which is our latest SDK, and it will allow game developers such as yourselves to bridge your games with the latest blockchain technologies. More specifically, the Cronos Play SDK includes certain functions and methods that have been introduced by ChainSafe already, and it also allows you the opportunity to use the Cronos functions as well, such as the Cronos RPC methods and everything that evolves around the Cronos network. More specifically, we will have a look at some functions such as getting the balances, but as well we will look at how you can actually get the ownership of specific tokens. And finally, we also have a look of how you can import NFT images and replace it with game texture so that you can actually start building games that import NFT images and then replace it with in-game textures as well. But why don't we dig into it? Okay, let's get started. So first off, the SDK assumes a couple of prerequisites in terms of understanding. So you should have a little bit of Unity knowledge. Maybe I've done some example apps. If you haven't, there's a lot of good tutorials available on YouTube, which I would recommend. There's a number of them. And also perhaps a little bit of knowledge on the ERC 721, ERC 20, and other EVM practices might be also some good prerequisites to have. If you don't have them yet, don't worry at all. There's a lot of good material out there that can help you to pick up very quickly on those concepts. Now, another thing to bear in mind is the SDK is currently supporting WebGL, iOS, and Android builds, and other platforms may work, but there's no guarantee really that they will. And we also will only extend our support to other platforms after we have stabilized our current architecture. Apart from that, I think there's a couple of things that we will need, such as a mobile IDE if you want to build on mobile devices for Android or iOS. Uh, DeFi Connect, which we will need in the browser. So whenever we want to use a browser-based game, we should have that extension, as well as any other wallet that you might be working with, such as MetaMask, for instance. And last but not least, it would be very good to have some assets, some NFT assets. You can use our NFT faucet to create some test assets, or if you have already some, then you can use those as well. Now, the first thing that you should do is if you haven't installed Unity yet, you can just go on our docs and click on the download link, which is going to bring you to the Unity page, and then just follow the instructions over there. And then another thing to keep in mind is we will be using the RPC method in the functions and the scripts that we have in our Unity build in the SDK. And you can choose between whether you want to use, let's say, the mainnet, which is the chain ID 25. It uses this specific endpoint here, the RPC method, or the other chain, which is the testnet chain, which has a chain ID of 338. So the first thing to do is you can choose whether you want to clone the repository or you just download the latest release from ChainSafe by clicking on the link here in the documentation. And then you can start to create a new 3D game or 2D game if you want to build, let's say, a top-down game or something like this. That's totally up to you. But for the purpose of this workshop, we want to focus on 3D objects. So I have done that already. I'm not going to go through all the steps, but what I want to do is I'm going to open my latest environment in here in Unity. And then we have a couple of examples. Okay. So one thing that might be good to know is you might need a specific library. So if you're going to have an error output for the JSON.NET library, what you can do is you can just go to Package Manager and add the JSON.NET library for Unity and then import it. And then that should solve the JSON.NET error that you might have when you start your first project. Let's go back to our docs and let's have actually a look at our first example in here. So what we want to do is we want to run the script. So what we're going to do is we want to create a script in here. Let's go to our scripts folder and that's actually in the EVM folder. Yeah, let's do it in the EVM folder. Just give it a random name. Okay. And I'm going to use VSC for this. So what we want to do here is just paste this in here. The class is going to be example since that's what we have been using when we created the script. But we also want to have a prefab. So let's just go into our Web3 Unity folder and create a prefab. I'll call it example and add a component. And then let's look for example. So here we go. And what we want to do now is we can test this actually. But we still have to fill out a couple of things. So let's change this to say test net. Let's change the RPC method in here. And what we want to have as well is our testnet address. I'm gonna go ahead and open MetaMask. Copy my address from here. And that's it. That's the script. And what this script is gonna do, it is gonna use the EVM balance off method, and it's gonna print the balance. So if I run the script now in Unity, I should see a balance in here. Okay, so I have two audio listeners. Let me actually go back, just remove this one here. I'm still running here. Let me just close this off. Let's remove the scene. Okay, now this should work. It's gonna. And here we go. So obviously, that's not the converted value. It's still in its WAV format. So it's around. That's the test tokens that I have in my wallet, and it basically just tested my wallet balance in the test net, which is around 125 Chrome. Obviously, you can convert this anytime. There's a couple of options to do that. Okay, now that this one is working, let's actually have a look at my NFT balance that I have on the testnet. So I'm just gonna take this piece here, but obviously you can follow the guide, which will show you how to create the different scripts and prefabs. But let's just go ahead and copy these elements in here, those strings. Okay, actually might not make sense to remove everything because there's a couple of stuff that we want to use. Let's remove this. And now we also need contract address. And what we want to do here is we want to use the faucet address that I have. If I go and have a look, I think I added it in another application in here. The one that I used for the web app. And here we go. I'm just gonna take it. Oh, that's the contract address here. And then I post the contract address of my NFTs in here. Save it. And now if I go back into my Unity environment, what I want to do now is I want to rerun this. Okay, that's a compiler error. Oh, okay, I have a duplicate. And I copy pasted the information before. Now it should work. Then we run this again, and now it should print the balance of the NFTs that I have. And in fact, there's around 4 test NFTs that I have. They're all ERC 721. So that worked as well. And now let's just go back and try to get the ownership of a specific NFT. So what we want to do here is we actually just need the token ID and the contract. I deleted the contract by mistake. Don't need the account. Don't need the RPC method. And here we're gonna put in, let's say, 53, which is the ID of one of the NFTs that I have. And now it should print out my address. So come back here. And I run the script to run the build. Play it. Okay, didn't go through. Let me try to save this again. Okay, I didn't save it, but now it should work. It's played. And here we go. Now it printed my address. And this is how, you can check the ownership of specific NFTs as well. But let's do one that's a little bit fun. It's actually about how to import specific NFTs. And for this example, we just gonna remove this prefab here. For this example, we're gonna create a quad object. So you can just go here and create a 3D object. I used the quad, gave it some scale, um, and then I've added a script in here, and that's the one. So for now, we don't want to use the player prefs method. We actually want to use just a hard-coded address. And then in a minute, I'm gonna use the player prefs once we start to create the build. Okay, so we have our account, we have the contract and the token ID. Now you're gonna see how the token with ID 53 is gonna look like. We use the testnet RPC method. We used a string owner of method. Here in the function, we check for chain, network, contract, token ID, and the RPC method. And then we have a condition. So we want to compare the owner of and the account. So basically, if the owner of that NFT equals to the account that I'm specifying here in the string, then I can start with the process of fetching the URI from the chain. But I also want, so because this is using the IPFS method, I want to replace IPFS in the string with the HTTPS method so that it will work in our Unity build. Once that's done, we fetch the JSON from the URI, and we do that by using Unity web requests. And we then use the response data method to get the JSON response from the request. And what we will do then is we will parse JSON to get the image URI. And here again, we want to make sure that we replace the IPFS with HTTPS. And once that's done, we should be able to fetch the image and display the image in the game and basically get the texture of the image and replace it with the white the white color that we see here in the quad. So I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna play this. And now you can see it's logging uh, the details from the URI, and it should replace this white quad, as you can see here, with this little helmet that I have in my NFT faucet, test faucet. It's actually one item that I've been using for a top-down game example, which you can Google up on YouTube. It has been presented with the Blockchain Gaming Alliance and also with ChainSafe very recently. So if you have some time, try to Google it or search on it on YouTube. It's quite interesting. Okay. Now that this is working, I'm gonna put this back to player prefs. I'm gonna save this. And what I want to do now is I want to build and test this in our browser. So I'm just gonna show you what you can do. You can use the web login scene, and then when you go ahead and in the build settings, a couple of things that you have to do. You have to select WebGL, and in the player settings, if you want to use the DeFi wallet, you will select the Cronos logo in here for the DeFi wallet. If you think you will mainly work with MetaMask, then you can go ahead and select the second template in here. So what we want to do now is just build and run this. Obviously save it. Now it's going to take a bit to build the scene, or the scenes, because it's two scenes. What it will show is basically a login scene where you have to connect your wallet, and then once that is done, it will basically replace any NFTs that you might have um, with the white quad in the second scene. If you don't have any NFTs, then the quad will basically remain white and no texture will be loaded to the game. Okay, now that the build has completed, let's go and check out our game in the browser. As you can see, we have a login screen. We have our MetaMask and our DeFi wallet in here. Let me see if my MetaMask is connected. It's not, so let's go ahead. And here we can see the DeFi wallet, the wallet connect option, and as well MetaMask. I'm going to use MetaMask this time because my NFTs have been created with my Cronos MetaMask account. I'm just going to go ahead and approve. And now I should see my image. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, and that's it in a nutshell. So I hope this was helpful. And I hope you have enough information to start to build your own NFT games.